welcome to Mulligans with Niramas. I'm Joseph for Niramas, and I'm here today, of course, with Reko. And he's excited because we are going to do our top 5 beginner tips for KeyForge players. So KeyForge is a game that I come to really enjoy. I love it so much. I'm so excited for the new things coming for it, and I enjoy just playing it a lot. Reading about it, talking about it. Yeah, it's just so great. And I think it's time to do one of these top 5 beginner tips, because I do play a lot with beginners. I mean, naturally, I'm teaching the game to people, and so I see some mistakes being made by beginners, sort of different people, but they keep doing the same kinds of mistakes. So I thought it'd be a good idea to just give you some tips, some heads up, so maybe you can get faster, get into the game, and really start enjoying it as you start winning some games as well. So let's start with my number 5 tip. So number 5 is pretty simple, and this is somewhat of a weird tip to give in a game. The tip is to read the rules, but yeah, that sounds crazy. But yeah, the PDF rules, there aren't really any written rules for this game. If you buy the starter set, then you will get like a quick startup guide that you can check out to get the game going. But what I'm talking about here is not just like the rules on how the game is played, because that's obvious, you want to know that, of course. But what I'm talking about here, maybe you've been taught the game by someone, by me, or by some friend or whatever. But then it could be a good idea to look at those PDF rules and actually look at the different keywords, because there is some confusion. I know I've seen some confusion about like what is steal, what is capture, how does that work. These different keywords, there's also like a FAQ, so some situations that could be good to read up on, different situations where sort of some keywords might be in conflict and all that. It's good to check that out. And I'll put the link down here in the description as well, right, so you can go find those rules, so you can just Google for KeyForge rules, of course. So that's my number 5 tip. Might sound obvious, but I think it's a good idea to check them out. And tip number 4 is to do the mulligan in some cases. In some cases you don't want to do that, but let's talk a bit about it, because the mulligan means, of course, that you get to take your starting hand of cards and shuffle it into your deck and then draw a new card. You draw 1 less than you have to begin with. So if you're the starting player, then you start with 7 cards, right? And you're only going to get to play 1 of them or discard 1 of them. So you really want to have some card that fits that first card, play. You want to have something that helps you out, like Mother, for instance, from Logos will make you draw 1 more right away at the end of your turn. But if you don't have that, then you have 7 cards and you play 1, you still have 6, which means you don't get to draw a card on your first turn. So why not do a mulligan? I think, especially if you're the start player, I think you should do a mulligan in a lot of cases. Maybe you have a lot of action cards that are really good, but they will affect creatures out on the board, and you don't have any creatures yet. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of situations. You have to decide this from time to time, of course, but I usually do quite a bit of mulligans actually in this game. Also, I would say that you need to have sort of combining with this. It's sort of a combined tip. The other thing here is to have a plan from the beginning, not just play the cards as they come to you. So yeah, in that mulligan you want to see like, okay, you have a good card to play on your first turn, but what are you going to play on your second turn? You need to have a little bit of a strategy going there. Might be obvious, but I do want to mention it as well. So let's head to number 3. So number 3 tip is to remember the rule that says that when you play a card, you resolve as much as possible on that card. And this could be important, and especially I think a lot of players playing other kinds of card games against each other, that might not be the case. So might be a bit special for KeyForge. So you need to consider that. For instance, one common thing that I think a lot of people sort of miss in their thinking, I did myself, it took me a while before I realized this, is that if there's no enemy creatures out and you have your creatures and you have some effect, some card, there's artifacts, there's display effects that says ready and fight with a friendly creature. Well, you are going to ready, and then there's nothing to fight, so then the creature is ready. If it's off the house that you have active that turn, then you can do other things with it. You can use an action, or you can do the reap. So this could be really important in some cases where you're in a situation where your opponent doesn't have any creatures out on the battle line. Well, then you can use your creatures even if it says ready and fight. Another example is the key hammer from this. And it says that if your opponent forged a key on the previous turn, unforge it. And then there's a dot. So that's the first sort of sentence of the card. And then it says your opponent gains 6 amber. So if you play this one and your opponent did not forge a key on their previous turn, they're still gonna get 6 amber. So that would be terrible to just give them that, right? So you need to consider that the card will act as much as possible. There might be situations where you actually want to do that anyhow. If you have like a strong steal or capture card, maybe that could be a possibility to do, but most of the time you want to be wary of that. So that is, think about as much as possible rule for KeyForge. And number 2 tip for KeyForge beginners is, well, I put it down like reap beats fight. Of course, that depends on the situation. There's situations where you absolutely should be fighting with your creatures. But I think a lot of people come from games. I mean, myself, I played a bunch of Hero Realms and Star Realms, which is, this 2-player game where you fight your opponent. You have a health pool, or Hearthstone for that matter. So it's easy to just think about, like, yeah, let's do this. Let's get these strong creatures out and let's fight. And that might not be the way to win in KeyForge, which is one of the things I really like about the game. It's not just the strong creatures out there fighting and then you win. You need to make amber, you need to get amber so you can forge those keys. So reaping is a lot of times, it's better to reap than to fight. And having a strong creature is good because then he will probably survive for a long time and you will be able to reap many times using it. So, yeah, I mean, reaping in some situations a good way to win, especially if you have one of those decks that doesn't have that much free amber. The way to win is basically to establish a good battle line, get rid of those opponents, keep your things alive, and hopefully have a bunch of them from the same house. So you can go Brobnar and you have 5 Brobnar creatures out. You can reap 5 times. That's a quick way to get a win most of the time, unless your opponent has a really good way to steal and destroy your amber. So I think reaping often beats fighting in KeyForge. And my number 1 tip for beginners starting to play KeyForge is hand management. Of course, it's a game about hand management, so it might sound stupid, but you have to sort of build up for good hands. You're going to have ebb and flow turns. You're going to have some turns where you don't do that much, but then you're going to have these strong turns where you really can get things done. And you need to time that, and that timing is what I really enjoy about the game, actually. So you have to consider, if you only have 2 Sanctum cards out there, are you sure you're going to play Sanctum just to play those 2 cards? Maybe it's better to play Mars and maybe discard a card and draw more cards, get a stronger Sanctum hand, just as an example, so that once you choose Sanctum you can play maybe 4 cards, you can get some actions going and all that. So I think hand management and that's sort of, I think, the way to improve in this game is to get good at the hand management and planning your turns ahead, planning what will you play next turn or the turn after that, and then sort of putting the cards. I mean, if you can archive, you really should archive. That's a really strong ability as well, because it's not just that it puts a card in your archive, which you later on can pick up and start your turn with more than 6 cards. But also because that means that you will draw an extra card at the end of the turn that you are archiving in. So building that hand management and managing how your cards, build up, how your hand looks at the start of your turn, that's really important. And I just love it when I sit there and I have 6 untamed cards in hand. I can play my whole hand, and then I get to draw 6 new cards, which is great as well. And also I should mention on this note, another thing sort of related to this is the discard function. I've seen a lot of beginners in this game sitting and holding on to a card it's a good card, maybe it's a board wipe. You're sitting there holding on to it because you want to have it at the right time. But that time might not happen, or it might happen too late. Maybe your opponent gets to do a lot of stuff before that. So don't get too in love with your cards, I would say. Discard them when you don't need them so that you can draw new ones, so that you can get your sort of engine of some sort going. especially early game. And also consider that the cards that you're going to reshuffle your deck, and then you're going to be able to get some of those cards back. You can also play cards just for the free amber. This is also something I've seen a bit, that people seem to think that, well, this card isn't good right now because I don't need the effect of the card. Well, if it gives you free amber, you might want to play it. Nothing happens. Once again, you do as much as possible on the card, but you still get that free amber, and you get the card out of the way so that you can draw a new card. So you never want to discard a card if it's a free amber card that you could play, of course, as long as the effect doesn't really, makes a bad effect on your creatures or your situation. So yeah, that is top 5 beginner tips for KeyForge. If you know KeyForge, if you feel comfortable with it, maybe you don't agree with my tips, maybe you think there's something else that should have been mentioned, well, tell me in the comment section. All tips are good. Let's just have a discussion in there, and don't forget to like the video as well. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great evening or morning, or whenever you're watching. Take care. Bye bye. Be like Draco. Follow Board Games with Niramas on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us at BGW Niramas.
Board Games with Niramas is sponsored by Alara Games in Sweden.